Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Respecting the Beer. My name is Geier. With me again are the good doctors, the usual suspects, Bobby Fleshman, Allison McCoy, owners, operators of McFleshman Brewery here in Appleton, Wisconsin, on State Street. Makers of fine lagers, stouts, porters.
Is this a commercial or a podcast?
Just trying to do something different.
The tourism.
Now, we've talked a lot about visiting other breweries. We've had people on the show that have done a lot of brewery tourism, but I think our guest today kind of takes the cake. He is the author of Flights Across America. He has been to, would you say, the thing on the book says 1,000 breweries. Do you think you've been to 1,000?
So I've been to almost 1,500 now.
All right, that's over 1,000.
Yep.
Joel Geier. Now, I got to admit, I used to work in the travel space. When I saw Flights Across America, that just as easily could have been a book about aviation, but it's actually a book about your travels to breweries across the country and I guess getting flights. So how'd you get started doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me on. Really appreciate the opportunity to come on and chat with everybody. So I guess I write about in the book, my passion with craft beer initially started with my dad. Growing up in rural Wisconsin, rural Iowa, most everybody had cases, Miller Lite, Busch Light, etc. in their fridges. And my dad always had Leinenkugel's Creamy Dark and Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. This would have been, 90s, early aughts. And he always kind of told me that if he was going to drink a beer, he wanted to enjoy it. And I kind of, took that with me. And when it was my turn to start being able to buy my own beer, my college roommates we would go to the grocery store and they would buy a 30 rack of whatever cheap beer was on sale that week. And I would go over to the craft section and I would do a pick six, or I would get a variety pack from some national or regional brewery. And I tried tons of beer. And from there, I just kind of continued enjoying trying beer. And it got to a point, I did visit a handful of breweries. My wife and I got married right out of college and we moved to Oregon, lived in Eugene, visited some breweries. Then we moved back here to Milwaukee. And it was probably a few months after that I kind of realized I'd gone to some breweries here. And it was like, okay, well, I've been to, I don't know, at that point, maybe a couple dozen, 20 or so. I was like, this is kind of, I enjoy collecting things. And to me, it kind of felt like, oh, I'm almost collecting these breweries. And I started a list and that quickly became a spreadsheet. And it very rapidly went from, the way I say it is it went from, a passionate hobby to a borderline unhealthy obsession with doing research, finding every single brewery that I could. And yeah, so, and I guess not to bury the lead, but the reason I was able to do this was because of my wife's profession. She was a travel nurse on 2 different stints, one before kids, and then we started traveling again after kids. And then for the last 3 years, she also worked, or 4 years now, she worked as a psychiatric nurse practitioner, fully remote. And so that enabled us to continue to travel until we've been home now for a little over 2 years here in the Milwaukee area, now that my oldest, started school. But yeah, so we lived in 14 states for our 9th wedding anniversary. And so that life that we kind of lived for several years was what enabled me to do this. Because obviously, at the time of the book, it was a little under 1,400. Now it's, I've been to almost 100 more, but getting to, at the time of the book, 1,400 breweries across all 50 states is not something that you can just stumble into doing. I was very lucky and blessed that a career path that my wife chose is what enabled me to do that. So yeah. And she hates beer, which is the best part.
There is a word for people that have an obsession about beer. And in fact, there are organizations you can join and groups you can attend in church basements. So
yeah. But yeah, to go back also, the flight question though too, when it came to the flights, that was something that if I go to a brewery for the first time, if they offer a flight, that's what I will be getting for my first time. I'm sure you guys have probably had the discussion on here, and I actually have the discussion in my book about the pros and cons of all the different types of pours when you're visiting a brewery, especially if you're visiting a brewery for the first time. And in a lot of cases, maybe the only time, the pros of just getting one, a pint, getting a flight, getting half pours, et cetera, et cetera. But that was just the way that I found the most joy in doing it, was doing the flights. And it just felt that, I included a little subheading of Brewery Lover's Journey to make sure to clarify it, but just wanted to have a fun play on words. I had the title for the book well before I even really had the firm idea that I was going to be doing the book. But that's how we kind of got to that point.
So, not to derail this conversation, but when we're talking about flights, it feels like a very American invention. I'm thinking about going to an English pub. I don't think that's a thing. And I don't think it's a thing when you go to On Decker in Germany, or when you go to any Irish pub. It's a very American way of approaching and interacting with beer, I think. You agree with that?
Yeah, I do want to. And I think, part of it is that in some ways, it is, I don't know if gluttony is like the right term for it, but essentially you're trying to get more beers. It's more glassware, it's more time, it's more work. You're trying to get, more and more out of it. Whereas, when you're talking about in European, you're talking about the more traditional styles. Like when you go to Cologne, you're getting the Kolsch glassware. Yeah. You're getting a full pour of that. You're sitting there and you're having Kolsch service. In Czech, you have the dimple mugs. Like there are specific, styles of glassware for these specific types of beers. And, with Czech, I love Czech lagers, and, they have the 3 different pour styles that they can do. So it's just a very different way, like doing the flights, where I think part of that did come out of craft also, because craft breweries are producing so many different types of beer. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these more traditional places, like I talked about, like Kolsch, you're going to a brewery, you're drinking the Kolsch, over there.
I've been there. I've done that. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. And some of these Czech breweries, they may have a handful of beers, but they're not doing what a lot of craft breweries are doing, where you may have anywhere from 8 to 12 upwards of, 20, 30 plus beers on tap. And
we're getting photo bombed in real time right now.
I had to pop in and say hi since we met on Saturday.
This is Carrie popping in.
I know. Yeah. I talked with Carrie this past Saturday at Fond du Lac Brew Fest.
Mm-hmm. Well, she's here for a guest appearance.
I was next door listening to music, so I said I had to pop in and say hi.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we were talking about how flights are kind of an American thing. And and I think that's because, like I said, there's so many different styles. And so when someone's coming in for the first time, if they're like someone that's going to be having more than one drink, especially, they may be like, there's 20 choices here. I can hardly narrow it down to 4, much less 1 on my first go round. So they want to try 4 different things before committing to a full pint. And I think flights in a way may have started off as just a way to essentially try to just provide a sample. And it did take off and became more popular, I think, than what it maybe initially was designed for. But
that would make sense.
Like I said, it is more work, but the profit margins are, at least higher for the beer. And I'm willing to pay that, because I do know that it is more work. But yeah, that's just been my personal take, was that I wanted to try several beers at these breweries, and I was visiting multiple breweries in a night sometimes when we were traveling. And so I didn't have the opportunity to sit down for 3 hours at every single brewery and have multiple pints of beer. That just was not in the cards for me. And so for my purposes, flights were, my approach to it. Obviously now when I'm, here in Milwaukee visiting breweries, or if I'm visiting breweries here in Wisconsin I've been to, I'm for the most part getting full pours of beer though, because that's just my preference. When I'm visiting a brewery, I already know, because at that point I kind of like, I know what I want to get here. But yeah, flights were just something that I've always enjoyed. And I actually have a big section at the end of my book. I have a color photographs of all the unique and fun flight boards from around the country that I was able to enjoy.
Have you ever made it to Santa Rosa to see Russian River with their 18 or plus?
I did not have the 18, but I did have I had a big flight there because I was with my father. I don't think we did the 18, but we may have done 10 or 12. Yeah, I'd have to go back. I have the picture somewhere, but yeah, the book is. It's fun to see how breweries have. There are breweries that have taken this idea of a flight and completely made it their own thing. With the fun flight boards that play into a theme or the brewery's name or the state that they're in. Because I've had there's a couple different breweries in Wisconsin even that have a flight board that's shaped like the state of Wisconsin. So I enjoy the creativity behind those.
What's the wildest flight board you've seen, or size wise or shape wise?
I've had, and it was actually technically a few different places, but I've had that used miniature skateboards, like real skateboards.
That's fun.
And I think they had, I don't know how they did, but they obviously, the wheels no longer spun, because I'm like, yeah, that would be smart, because if someone comes in and they have more than one, they have a couple beers and they have one of those things are going to send up sliding across the table and creating a whole mess. But yeah, so, that was a fun one. There's also one called Jailbreak in Maryland that I really liked. It was shaped like a gigantic key, and you had to be very they really only served with the bar, because the part where the glasses was part of where the long part of the key was, and it was very thin. So it was a very interesting flight board design. And I'm also a sucker for ones, like I said, I like ones that are shaped like the state.
Yeah.
So I got to ask you the big question. How many beers do you guys have on tap? Is it 24?
It's more than that. I think 28 maybe.
20, say 26.
It's 26. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. A
Maybe
lot.
24
Yeah.
and then the two liquors.
You come into a place like this. How do you choose your flight?
Yeah.
Or do you let them
That's a great
choose?
question.
That
That's a
is
great question.
That's the question, I think.
Yeah. And
That's why
I
Red
do,
River made
and I
the
talk about that
board.
in my book, because that was something that I kind of grew and adapted over time, because I did for the longest time, I did always, getting a variety was important. And my palate grew a lot over these travels, obviously, shifting what styles I preferred and what I liked. And for the most part, I drink and enjoy basically everything. But they're obviously, no matter who you are, you're going to have certain styles and beers that you prefer. But my rule of thumb is, if you're going in fully blind to a random brewery, I always, if it was just a brewery that kind of ran the gauntlet of styles, because obviously there are places, McFleshman makes a lot of lagers. There are breweries that specialize in IPAs. But if you're just going to your average run-of-the-mill brewery, my rule was kind of getting something light, something dark, something hoppy IPA, and then one wild card, assuming that it's a traditional flight of four.
Something borrowed, something blue.
Yeah, well, and I'm a big fan of sours, and so if there was a sour on tap, that would often be my wild card. Or if there were multiple Belgians, then I would get a Belgian. But I would do a lot of research ahead of time. I did the further I went along in this, the more research I was doing. And if I didn't already know it ahead of time, I would go in and I would ask them to make sure. I would always say, okay, do you have any flagships or any beers that I need to make sure that I try? Because I don't necessarily go into a brewery and just want to do the flagships, because I do want to, I want to see, depending on what they all are offering, there's beers that I want to try too. But if you are getting a flight, I do think it's important to get at least one or two of the beers that a brewery is best known for, because in theory, those flagships are beers that hopefully are the most, the most dialed in, they're the most popular, et cetera, et cetera. And you'll get places that have a style of beer that you would not expect to be a flagship. And the story I always tell with this, and why I always ask this question, is that early in my travels, I'd been to less than 200 at this point, or no, just over 200, so less than 300. I stopped in Dallas at a brewery called Peticolas Brewing Company, and they had a ton of beers. I didn't really know a whole lot about them, and I was kind of going through my list. I got pretty sure I did, a lighter lager. I got some sort of IPA, and then had some stout or whatever. And I asked the bartender, it was pretty busy. We're like, hey, I have one more beer, and you guys have a lot up there. What should I get? He's like, oh, well, you don't have our flagship, our Imperial Red Ale. And, so this would have been, also 2017 or 2018. And in having a flagship Imperial Red Ale at I think, I forget, it was 9% or something.
Have you ever listened to this podcast before? So we have 547, which is our double West Coast IPA. It's 9%. And it's arguably our flagship, depending on who you talk to. And for that, to match with that story.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it wasn't just ABV too. It's having a red ale, it was a style that you don't, especially at that time. It was you were expecting to hear a hazy IPA for a flagship or a lager or a blonde ale, and so having an Imperial Red Ale, that was really interesting. And that's also not a style that I typically would have ordered at that time either.
Right.
And it was my favorite beer of that whole night. It was amazing. And so that was one of the first times that I can remember asking that question and having that kind of, dialogue. And that now is the first question. If I'm only going to get one question, and if it's kind of busy, I'm going to ask them quickly, one or two beers, what do I need to make sure I include? And that's why I prefer visiting breweries, on weekdays, or during slow times, because then I can have conversations with people. And I've taken handwritten notes. So I have a little portfolio, like leather, that I have notepads I swap in and out. I have taken handwritten notes at every single brewery visit since number 56. So I have a massive stack of notepads, and believe it or not, sitting by yourself and writing in a notebook at a brewery will, especially if it's slow, people will come up and be like, who's this, loser? But anyway, it was a great way for me to start these conversations when it wasn't busy. And that gives you the opportunity to ask more questions about the brewery, the history, the building, and obviously about the beer, and to learn more about the beer, what they're known for, to make sure that you're trying, really good beer. Because yes, obviously I like to get a variety, but again, if you're going to a place that is really well known for their Belgian styles, you don't want to get just one Belgian and then stagger some other styles. You want to make sure that you get at least 2, if not 3 of that style that they're best known for, because otherwise you're not really giving that brewery, I don't want to say a fair shot, but you're not getting the proper experience at that brewery, essentially. So that's kind of been my approach. It obviously has grown and changed, but that's been my typical rule of thumb for an average brewery visit, as well as kind of how I approach it when I am going to a brewery that I may not have as much knowledge about.
Yeah, we see people in here with their books and their journals writing, and I don't think about that enough. It would be an opportunity to slide over and ask what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
If not to, I don't want to creep them out, but
what the hell are you doing?
What the hell are you doing in here?
Well, on like the beer tender side, I'll say I always appreciate that question. Like, what should I drink? Because here we've got the cask beers and the Lucre faucet, and a lot of people have no idea what that is, especially the cask beers, where that's something that we do really, really well. And that is my question back, is like, have you ever experienced the cask beer?
Yes.
Okay, you've got to pick one of these then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I remember having the cask. I remember during that my first visit McFleshman's, I did have one of the cask beers, and whenever there's only been, I think, 2 breweries, and one in particular, and I think they may have just announced closure. Hogshead in Denver, they specialize in cask beer.
I know those people. We were planning a collaboration.
Yeah, let me. I thought I saw something about that. Maybe it was one of the other ones out that direction.
Yeah,
maybe they haven't. Maybe they are.
Breweries. Yeah,
but I'll have to double check that. But either way, that was one that was similar, and there's a lot of breweries like that. And then in Denver too, I mentioned the different Czech pours. There's a brewery called Cohesion.
Oh yeah, I was going to bring that up earlier when you were talking about the options. They don't offer a lot. You take what you get there. Yeah.
Well, and you can also do a flight of the Czech style pours.
Can you really?
Oh,
yep. You can, and you can either do it.
Good idea.
You can either do it with the same beer, or you can do it with different beers. But they give you a card. Yep, Hlinka, Sneet, and Nico pour. Yep. And so you can do all 3 pour styles as a flight.
That's kind of a fun idea.
You've never been there, right?
No, I haven't, but that is a really fun idea.
Cohesion is worth itself a destination. Just go to Cohesion, and then Denver happens around you. But that and Bierstadt.
Yep.
Those are worth it.
Bierstadt was my, I made it special.
Denver.
Bierstadt was my 1,000th brewery visit.
Oh,
I got the personal tour and everything. We were living in Denver. That was one of our stints where we were living in Denver. And I knew right away that was I knew before we got there that I was going to be hitting my number 1,000. And so I made sure that it lined up, so that way I planned ahead and got to do it at Bierstadt, got the whole tour, the whole history and everything. And of course, started off with a Helles and then waited for my slow pour. Got the Instagram shots, as everyone does before GABF, because that's what we were actually out there for GABF, which was really cool. But yeah, Bierstadt and Cohesion, I could just hang out at those 2 places.
You and me both, yeah.
McFleshman's field trip?
Yeah, company expense. Hey, I noticed you have a cool city hat on. I actually worked with those guys when they were designing their brewery back in the day.
You want to talk about flights?
Oh my God, they are all about flights. That's the connection. I got you.
Yeah.
Everything they do is flights, whether it's bourbon or beer or nachos, it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah.
Burgers. And we went, because my wife doesn't, like I said, my wife doesn't drink beer or any alcohol, but she had a cappuccino flight. Yeah. And then I had a burger slider flight, and I think we split a burger flight and a wing flight, and I had my beer flight, of course. But the ice cream flights, they got all sorts of the different like you said, the liquor flights, and they got it all. It's crazy.
Flights of flights.
Have you ever had a flight on a flight?
No.
Ooh.
Oh, there's
Is
your
that a-
first
Listen,
I've
challenge.
been a mile hike
I've
club?
had flights.
Mile Club flight.
Yeah, I've had flights at airplane themed breweries, and I did actually have a flight inside of an old fuselage because there's an airplane themed brewery also in Denver that we're just talking about Denver that had an old fuselage that you could sit in. So it was like you were sitting in an airplane, but not. It's obviously not.
What's the name of that brewery? Oh, don't worry about it. I didn't know if it was like a one I should know. I lived in Boulder for 8
It's
years.
Flight Co.
Okay, I don't know that. Oh, wait, no.
And
I
then
do
they
know.
moved.
Yeah.
They moved from
big-
that location to like they're at like the old traffic control tower of an
Yeah.
old airport now.
And they've got like a million pinball machines and
Mhm.
shit inside. Yeah, they went all in with the entertainment factor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Cool. That's my old stomping grounds.
So now I have to ask you another big question.
Mhm.
If you could have, of the 1,500 breweries you've been to, I'm assuming the average flight is 4 beers.
Mhm.
That's what a.
Yeah.
So if you were to assemble the Uber flight of all the beers you've tasted.
Oh, you're
and
asking the Mount Rushmore question?
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
This is the
So-
Grand flight.
Okay. This is going to be very tricky, but luckily, so for those that follow me on social media, so the whole time that I traveled, I did what I called an annual review, which at the end of each year, I gave out 20 awards for lots of different things from best taproom location and view to best flight board, best logo, best tap handles, but then also obviously best light beer, best sour, best dark beer, et cetera, et cetera. So I have all the winners listed in the book from that. And I can let me think, because it is tough, because essentially you are trying to pick my favorite lager, my favorite IPA, because that is
Like aliens come to Earth and they want to order
Yeah.
a flight, and you need to show the best of brewing on the planet Earth.
One opportunity.
I think so.
We should have preempted him with this.
I know. Well,
Yeah.
I've got them all here, and I am just trying to decide. I think so. I'll start because I feel pretty good about my IPA choice for my something hoppy, and that would be the Crusher from The Alchemist.
Okay.
Okay.
Because it's obviously the slightly bigger brother to the famous Heady Topper.
So we're talking hazies now.
Yeah, but that having those beers on tap in
Mhm.
Vermont was the first, because I was always kind of semi-indifferent to IPAs, and I had some that were pretty good. That was the first time that I had one that truly blew me away. Like, this is one of the best beers I've ever had. Because IPAs are still not my number one choice. That was just incredible.
It stood up.
A 99 rating on Beer Advocate.
Yeah, like
Yeah, he looked it up.
because and it's such a hipster answer because people will tell you there's a lot of people that will say the same thing I just did, like, oh, the Crusher. People that actually know beer, Heady Topper is the famous one, but if you actually know beer, it'd be the Crusher.
Yeah.
So not to get all on
As
that.
an aside, any beer named the Crusher really should have been in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Ooh,
See what you did there.
You know what I did there,
I
Kim?
know what
Let
you
me
did
tell you
there.
something about the Crusher.
The-
Milwaukee famous.
My something light is going to be the Kolsch from Chuckanut Brewing, based out in Washington.
Yep.
Okay.
That, if you were to ask me one beer and the most perfect beer in terms of style, quality, that would probably be my answer.
I watched the owner of Chuckanut give an hour presentation on how to make lager beer.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, everyone said, so what's the secret? Because he just gave this hour-long presentation. And he says, every little thing that I said, and it's every little thing I didn't say.
Yeah.
Is that everything about lager brewing it's not going to be loud. It's just everything done right in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, well, and they have, because they obviously, and they have, you go into their tap room and they have like these signs for all their beers, and it's like in like small font, it just shows like, oh yeah, this beer's won 6 medals at GBF. This one's won 4. This one's won
Chuckanut
5.
wins everything they enter. Yeah.
It's just crazy. I mean, I don't even know. I don't think they do anymore, but like, it's just like, that whole flight was amazing. But the Kolsch is what I rate the beers, and I don't give out, I think I've given out like 2 or 3 10s, like per, like, because I don't know, I should have do more, but that was the first time that I ever drank it. I was like, this is perfect.
What's the other lager brewery down is it Austin or Fort Worth? Can't recall, but it's a lager brewery and it's something oak. Is that
Live
ring a bell
Oak.
to you? Yes.
They make
right.
really good. Yep. They're my favorite down there in Texas.
So Chuckanut and Live Oak, I feel like are right there. And Bierstadt. Those are all the big three.
Bierstadt, yep. Mm-hmm. Well, and I mean, and also close by, I mean, Dovetail makes really great stuff.
Oh my God,
Dovetail.
Dovetail.
Dovetail's so
Yeah.
good.
So I mean, we do have. There are a lot of really great lager breweries in the U.S., and those happen to be also some of my personal favorite breweries. Weird coincidence, but yeah, it is. It's fun when you run into those kind of breweries.
I continue. Sorry.
Yes. So now I'm my dark beer. I'm debating if I try to go with something really big and bold that like more people would like. If I'm being true to myself, I'm gonna go with Bear Cookie from Bear Roots Brewing, which is in Vista, California, just north of San Diego. Immediately, like I said, if I'm being true to what my personal favorite was, I am a big. If I have to pick an adjunct for a dark beer, it's peanut butter, and that was the best peanut butter stout I've ever had. And there's obviously a more famous one in San Diego, the peanut butter milk stout from Belching Beaver that gets distributed all over the place. And that is also very good. But peanut butter has consistently been the adjunct that I have enjoyed the most. But I mean, yeah, it's because if you want to go more big basic in terms of like no adjuncts, it'd be the big Color Porter from Mountains Walking in Bozeman, Montana. Barrel aged, I'd pick one from either Angry Chair or Firestone Walker. But yeah, like I said, if I'm going to be true to myself, Bear Cookie, the peanut butter from Bear Roots Brewing. And then my wild card
Gotta be a sour. Gotta be a sour.
There's going to be a sour. And it is going to be one of the other beer besides the Kolsch that I would say to me was like pure perfection. And that was All Seeing. And it was a blueberry sour by Anchorage Brewing Company in Anchorage, Alaska. That was all hand-picked blueberries, all done, just the beers at Anchorage Brewing won my
Are they still around?
best brewery of the year there.
And
so. They just make just insanely good beer. Anchorage's brew scene as a whole is really, really good. Yeah. And it's led by Anchorage Brewing itself. And that sour was one of those beers where it killed me that I couldn't just know that I could go and get more.
Yeah.
Like, because that's the, like with traveling, that's one of the downsides when you're visiting these breweries, especially multiple breweries when you're out traveling. Mm-hmm. You're like, this is it. Like, this is my opportunity to drink these beers. I'm drinking them small, like, and then that's going to be it. There are very few opportunities otherwise that I may get to try it again. But I've had so many amazing beers where it's like, man, I wish I could do this. I could have this beer at my house. And that just isn't how it happens. But I can appreciate it in the moment and, understand that what I am enjoying is, just amazing.
I confused them for a moment with Jolly Pumpkin, which made a lot of great sours in the middle of their run, too.
Yes, they do, too.
And a lot of them barrel aged, so that in a lot of ways, very similar breweries. Yeah, I paid a lot of money for Anchorage beers in a place called, what was it called? City Beer in San Francisco. I used to go there to get all these great craft beers, and that was one of their landing points on the West Coast that they ship to. So yeah, I'm very familiar. I paid a lot of money for those things. Yeah, Campione mix in the middle.
The big barrel aged stouts are kind of their calling card.
Yeah.
But visiting the tap room, I also had an IPA, I had a light lager, and they nailed everything. Yeah. So it isn't just a, barrel aged stout program, even though that is what they are best known for and what most people are seeking out. But yeah, that Alaskan blueberry sour was so good. Do you want me to throw one bonus one in there for the weirdest beer I've ever had?
You can make a 5 flight paddle. Absolutely. That's fine. Go.
I'll throw in this one. Will just be this. This is the craft can be crazy pick because it's not like the craft is good. Like this is the
beer, isn't it?
What? Yeah. So I just want to mentally prepare you. Like so, I said we most interesting beer was also one of my awards.
Yeah.
And so let me find it here to make sure I include all the ingredients properly. Because it's a doozy. It was from so it's from a place that you would not imagine. It's from Lincoln, Nebraska. It's from a brewery there called Boiler Brewery, which is right downtown. And it was a hot sauce, barrel-aged chili and cinnamon roll pastry sour with a cinnamon sugar rim. with a dollop of like whipped cream too.
How about that, Gary? Enough buzzwords.
That'll go up there with like the Captain Crunch Lucky Charm stout.
Yeah. So and do you want to know the craziest part? It was not terrible. Like
That is
somehow,
high praise.
yeah.
That's the
it was
billboard right
actually
there.
like, it was fun. It was obviously a beer that I would enjoy in the flight because that's one of the other things when I see something so out there, because at this point I've seen it all. And so if I see something that I haven't really seen before, I usually want to get it in my flight. And something like that, somehow they were able to get those flavors, because apparently out there, like cinnamon rolls and chili is a thing. Like that's a thing. Like that's why they made this beer, was an homage to this regional delicacy. Like if you look it up, chili and cinnamon rolls is a thing. And somehow that you had a little bit of heat from the hot sauce. You had some of the chili flavor. You had the sweetness from the cinnamon. It had the cinnamon rim. And then it was still a sour. Like I don't know how they did it, or I guess I would like to say I want to know why they did it, but I know why they did it, because it's a hype beer that I'm sure drew the attention of a lot of people. And
but then they executed on it. That's the thing.
Even if they only came in and ordered a half pour or a flight glass worth of it, they were coming in to get other things too.
Just because it's a thing does not mean God smiles upon it.
Yeah. Oh no, guys, no. This was not one of those. Like I said, I was talking about just a few minutes ago about the pure perfection of the Kolsch from Chuck and Nut. This is the Antichrist of that. This is
well. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I've had some really weird, crazy beers, but that was always the one that I go to.
That one's
if
like
someone asked me for the weirdest one.
That's a singularity of beer. That one.
Yeah.
It divides by zero.
That's one of those ones that people are always like, well, can you even count it as beer? And that's one of the ones where you kind of shrug your shoulders, you know?
Well, you enjoy it, call it what you want.
Malt beverage.
There's malt in it and there's hops in it. So we all decide what it is. Oh man. Well, Gary took my question. That was my Mount Rushmore question. And you made it fun.
Well,
now my big question for you, being the guy who's written this book, Flights Across America, I have a philosophy that you don't get to know a beer unless you've had at least half a pint, if not a full pint. So I'm not taking away from what you've done, because you're on a mission to sample from as many breweries as possible. But how do you feel about the idea that there might be two different experiences here?
Oh, 100%. And like I said, I write about that in my book. I do break down the pros and cons of each, pour style, and that's why, like I said, when I go out, like I just was out to the Bucks game earlier this past week, and we went to Central Waters before the game, and I was getting full pours of beer. I'm not sitting there getting a flight, because it is very different when you're getting a full pour of a beer rather than a 4 or 5 ounce small pour of it, because one, you're obviously getting more of it. Like you're tasting more of it, you're getting more of it. The temperature changes can affect also the flavoring, especially if you're talking about, some of the big stouts. Like those type of beers can definitely be drastically affected, more so when you are talking about having a small pour versus getting a full, 8 or 10 ounce pour of those beers. So I do agree, because I do think, and I write in the book, that there is a lot to be said for it is, if you are talking about getting a true experience for an individual beer, it is 100% better. I agree. 100% better to get a full pour, if not multiple full pours, as you said. For my purposes, like I said, trying to get a feel for a brewery as a whole, when you get one chance, that's where I wanted to be able to try across different styles, different, beers that they may have been known for. And I didn't have the time, the liver, the money to sit there and drink, especially because there are nights that, I was going to 3 or 4 breweries. And so I obviously can't sit there and drink 3 pints at each one. My wife would no longer have been putting up with my hobby if that was the case.
At that point, you're not able to really give them a good judgment on what it is.
Yeah. And so it is like, I kind of equated to, there is not a perfect, doing what I was doing, there is not a perfect way. Because I know I'm really good friends with another brewery traveler who's been to even more than me, and he just does one full pour, and that's just what he does. And so I think that there is not a perfect way to go about it. There is not a one size fits all. So I think it really comes down to, like I said, I enjoyed doing the flights.
Mhm.
That I found a lot of fun picking out the beers, getting to try the different styles at each brewery. That's something that I enjoyed.
It's awesome.
All right. Before we wrap things up, where can people find you online?
Yeah. So I have an Instagram and a Twitter account called Brewery Travels. And that is where I posted all of my brewery visits. Every single brewery I visit, I did a post for when we were traveling. And whenever I do get to a new brewery, I still post about them. Twitter is just Brewery Travels. Instagram is Brewery_Travels. You can find the book literally anywhere online. Obviously, most people are going to know it for Amazon, but it's pretty much anywhere online. If you type in Flights Across America, A Brewery Lover's Journey, you'll find it. And then you can also find all of our stuff at Badger Beer Report. Greg and I and the rest of the gang are really working hard at growing our promotion of the Wisconsin craft beer scene. You can check us out on YouTube. We have the podcast and wherever you're listening to podcasts, Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, feel free to reach out if people have questions about traveling. I love talking about beer travel, visiting breweries, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, really appreciate you guys having me on to talk.
I'm sure our producer, David, will even put a link to Amazon in the show notes.
That would be so sweet.
All right. Well, that will conclude this episode of Respecting the Beer. The producer of Respecting the Beer is David Kelso. Without David, this show wouldn't exist. Join our Facebook group for updates and support the show over on Patreon. As a Patreon or Pub Club member, you'll get access to exclusive content, including bonus show segments and special events posted here at McFleshman's. Links to both of these are in the show notes. And until next time, please remember to respect the beer.